I was in a mansion of a house. Well, not my own home now, because this was when I was in my 20s. You see, like when I was a child growing up, well, there was 12 of us.
Yeah.
There were 6 boys and 6 girls in,
Yeah.
our house, and we had it was our house was full of music. My father and mother were both musicians. You see, one played the accordion, my mother played the accordion, father played the fiddle, and there was nothing but dancing. You know, the little house dances. Maybe you don't know these things, but that's. We'd have dances in the house at night, and all the neighbours would gather in. We'd have a flagged floor. There was no such thing as anything other than that, you know. That was the kind of the houses then. And we'd be dancing about 5 o'clock in the morning. And that was great.
What kind of dances were they?
It was all set dancing. There'd be waltzes for starters, because that's the normal one. And then there wouldn't be any jiving or you know, quick steps kind of thing. And there was lancers, which would maybe form a group of 8 people, 4 people, two people. There'd be mazurkas. That all right?
Yeah.
You see, I don't think they'd be doing those dances now, say in Leitrim, but the north of Ireland, that's the kind of a dancing we done up there. And that went on, and I left school. I left school at about 14. I was about 3 years in 7th class. First of all, we went to school when we were 3, remember?
Yeah.
In school, imagine, 3 years. And we only had to run down what they call the bray, from the house to the village, to the school. And we could run back up again at lunchtime for our lunch, you know, that way. So it was great. And well, there were so many of us at home, so we had to get out and go working. I went to my aunt, my mother's sister. She was a teacher, and I went to her house to help her daughter. They had a big farm. They had everything on that farm. They had cows, they had pigs, they had turkeys, chickens, the whole works. And I was helping her. I was 15, and that was my first job. But it would help, you know. It was great.
When you say helping, what kind of help would that be?
The helping would be that I'd be helping her to feed the chickens, the turkeys, milk the cow. Well, I didn't milk the cow because I wasn't able. She was doing it herself, but I was there giving her a hand, carrying buckets of milk and things, you know. Maybe feed a calf with a bucket, that kind of thing, you know. It was a great life. I can't remember how long I stayed there, but where did I go next then? I went then to work in a bar. I was about 17 then when I went to work in this hotel bar. And they were really, really strict with me. The woman in the pub, she was like an old spinster, and she had a brother, and none of them, they'd allow a young person to go out and have any kind of a life, you know. And some of them were ringing me up and saying, "Are you coming here? Are you going there, or what?" And of course, she would just put her foot down and say, "No, you're not going there." I was only 17. I wasn't 18. You see, I wasn't allowed to go to dance. I was 18 before I went to a dance. I'm talking about the dancing in the hall. You know, you're dancing at home, all right, but this was in the parochial hall.
Where was this?
That was in Newton Stewart, which was about 7 miles from Bridge, where I lived. You know.
And was it live-in in the pub?
Oh yeah, I was living in, of course. But I'd go home, get on my bike, and I'd cycle the 7 miles home at the weekend. I wouldn't have to work Saturday or Sunday. Monday morning, I'd be back on the job again. That was grand for a while, but I didn't stick it because he was so blooming strict. I just couldn't cope. Where did I go after that? I went to Belfast, and it was in the war finished. The Second World War finished in 45, and I'd be up there around that time. The rationing was still going on. You know, you wouldn't get only 2 ounces of tea and so much sugar and butter and all that. It was all rationing. And, you know, you'd be really hungry because when you're young, you'd always want to eat something. I don't know how long I was there. I was there when I was, 21, I remember. I was out one night, and I had a sister working in Belfast as well, and we went out. When we came home, the people we were living with said, "You'll have to go home in the morning." And I said, "Why?" "Well, your brother has died." We couldn't believe it. But I had a brother, and he had epilepsy from he was a child. He took it when he was you know the way children take it, and the doctor told my mother just to dip him into a hot bath, then into a cold one. And this was what the shock was supposed to get rid of the thing, but it didn't. So he had that all his life. He died when he was 33, but he was, you know, it was very sad. But when they mentioned that someone had died, I knew that it had to be him. So we took off from Belfast down to Clumbridge, which was about what do you say, 85 miles. And that was in June. So I was, 21. Let me think what I'd done after that. I went over to England to my sister. My eldest sister was married to my husband's brother. Now, think about that. It was a double, you know, two sisters marrying two brothers kind of thing. And that's why I married him, but I'll tell you about that later. Okay. This sister of mine had a boy and a girl, and one of them was 10 years and the other was 12. And she said to me that they would like to go home to Ireland. They hadn't been in Ireland, and would I bring them home? And I said, all right, I will. I brought them home for a month, but I brought them down to where their father came from, which was Leitrim here, and they up in an old, what they call a Comalt. Mary has a wee song about that. Last song Mary sang, well, not the last one, but near enough. It was all about the coal mines and the Comalt, where I started off when I got married, you know. And I stayed there a month, and this is when this brother of the sister husband, he was there, and his father was there, and of course his mother had died when he was about 8, so that meant that there was no woman in the house. So they started this talking that the grandfather said of these children said, how would I like to come and live in Leitrim? And I wasn't too enamoured because it was so backward, you know. Really and truly it was so backward. And I said, I didn't get him any decided answer at that stage anyway. But I went home. I went down to Inishowen for 4 years. I got married when I was 25. So at 21 I went down to Inishowen and worked there as a cook and bottle washer, whatever you could call it. Just a housekeeper, you know. These people were very rich people in Donegal. They had shops and all sorts all over the northwest of Donegal. They called them McIvers. And I was in their home. They called the house Greenbank, which was a beautiful house, and everything was. But I had a great life there because I was treated as one of themselves, you know. And I stayed 4 years there. And then I suddenly decided that I wanted to do something else. And this was the time that I went home and went to England. That was the time it was. When I was about 24, I went to England. And to pick up these two children and bring them to Leitrim for their holiday. And that was the beginning of.
And the place was called Comalt.
Comalt, C-O-M-A-L-T-H.
That's the townland, is it?
That's the townland, yes, indeed. The Mary CD now, the sleeve of that, if you read that, it'll tell you the whole thing, you know, from where we started off, you know.
And is it far from Drumkeerin, or?
It's about 3 miles at least, but it's all uphill. Once you go up about 2 miles up the road, you get in then onto a by road, what they call a by road. You start climbing then, and it's like walking up the side wall of a house. It was so steep. And I'll tell you something, you'd want to be standing halfway up and turn around and face the other way to get your breath back. Finally, you'd make it. But it works me crazy, but I mean, when you're 25, you'll do anything, you know. You go downtown here and you'll turn to your left. They call it the school road.
Oh, right, okay.
And it goes right up. In fact, if you look out that back window, you can see the road going up, right up, you know. My son had a bungalow built up on the main road. He had the farm. He took the farm when I decided I'd come into town to. That's another story. Anyway.
But you said it was quite backward.
Backward? Oh my God! Don't talk to me.
What is that?
I don't know. First of all, anyway, by the time I left Connell, go back home with these children, I went back to England with them, and then I came home. So this was going on all the time, and Tommy, my husband, late husband, he decided he'd come to Tunbridge to meet my father, to see would he give me as a, you know yourself. I only met the man twice, and I married him. Right. Think about it. Well, it's not that unusual. In them days it wouldn't be. But what they do is they decide between themselves, you're not in on it. You just do what you're told, kind of thing. You think I'm mad. That was it.
And were you happy? I mean, with that?
I didn't know whether I was happy or not, to tell the truth. I was betwixt and between. Because, no, the thing about this is, I pray. I pray and I pray and I pray. And I ask God to guide me. It wasn't that I had boys in my time. Like, I had plenty of lads earlier on in the years and went all over the place dancing and having a great time. But finally I thought, at 25, I thought, time to settle down. And I mean, I didn't really know. I knew that my sister Maureen was married to Tommy's brother. And they were in England all their life, like. But I didn't know what to expect. And I saw, the house itself didn't bother me, really, you know. You just, the thought of getting married and settling down and, you know, I knew that I wasn't going to have anything luxurious or anything, you know. But,
okay, I mean, can you describe the house then to me?
Well, the house was one bedroom. The bedroom and the kitchen were about the same size. And you could have 2 beds in the bedroom, if you know what I mean. Right. Okay? And then the kitchen. It was the walls were whitewashed. The roof was thatched, of course. But then in the kitchen then there was what you call a settle bed, a wooden. You know, you'd want to get down there to our little cottage, thatched cottage down there. You see a settle bed and you see all that in there, what we used to have. And then there was what you call an outshot bed, a bed that went out, like a little building, but it was all attached to the front of the house, and there was a bed there, and there was curtains on it. And that's where my children were reared, more or less, you know. That's where the babes were put when they arrived.
But was it your husband and his father? His father.
But the father, Mary was just 6 months old when the grandfather died. He was in bed for about 6 months with nowadays you'd call it, I suppose, cancer. Those days, they didn't know what it was. But he wouldn't allow a doctor near him. But we had to look after him, and we had to lift and lay at him, and you know, it was tough going. But finally, when he was dead in June. Mary died in January. Mary was born in January, 8th January. And I'll tell you what, there was no proper road into this house now. And it was all uphill, of course. When I came home with her from the hospital, I had to carry her in the snow, this high, to the house. Imagine. And she'll remember that herself. Well, no, she won't remember it, but she'll remember what I've told her about it. And I think she even mentioned in some of them things that how she was carried in the snow up to the house.
What year would have been that you got married?
The 19th of November, 53. And Mary was born on the 8th of January, 55. That was the beginning. So now, then I had a sister then at home, Eileen, and Tommy had a. You see, there were two houses under the one roof, but it was thatched, one-storied, and Philly Gallagher was her. Philly Gallagher was Tommy's cousin, and Eileen said she'd come to me for Christmas just to, to be with me, and well, first of all, she did meet her future husband at my wedding, which was Philly Gallagher. She had a fella that she was going with, and he went to Canada because Eileen had thrown him up for this other this other man. Eileen married in June, the 24th of June. I was married in January, and about 3 years' time, or what could be 4 maybe, Eileen and Philly decided they'd go to England. Philly had been working in the coal mines, and he'd been working in the forestry, and all them jobs had finished, and he didn't have any work, so they decided to go to England and left me sitting on top of on top of all the smoke up on the top of the mountain. I mean, away from my family, home, although I had my own children, and when you have your children, you don't be thinking about nothing else. There you're.
What kind of a farm was it, and what kind of work?
It was all rushy and not great, No, there was nothing very good about it, but there was cattle on it, and I'd learned to milk the cows. I remember Tommy's father used to come out to the cow byre where I'd been milking the cow, and he'd sit on a pile of hay, and he'd watch this woman with a bucket under the cow. I wasn't milking the cow properly and I didn't realise this at the time, but he gave out then to his son. He said, that woman is going to destroy that cow. She doesn't know how to milk a cow. I was taking the two front ones, I'd be milking there, and then I'd take, when that would be gone, I'd go to the back ones, which you had to do one in the front, one in the back to make them even, Finally, I've done it, and I got there. That milk was brought in, and it was put into crocks, and the cream, first of all, this is what we done. It was a big wooden churn, and with a dash, what they call a dash, a long thing, yoke, to beat the milk. Anyway, that milk was put into the churn, and maybe in about 4 days or 5 days, it would turn sour, and it was ready then to churn. Okay. I had to do that on my own. I didn't have anyone to help me. And that churning was could be 3/4 of an hour before the butter would come on the top of the. That was all new to me, you see, but I managed. It was terrific then, getting the basin and taking the butter off with a little beater, the butter spade rather, and I'd be mixing it all up and put some salt in it and getting it out and making little pats out of it, and we had a great time. There was no fridges, of course, that. Anything we wanted to keep cool, we'll have to sit in a bucket of water, That's the way we kept things cool. And
what would you do with the butter?
The butter was for the house to use. First of all, we never bought anything in the town, in Drumcairn. The donkey and the creels we got ready, and they were brought to town. We got a big bag of flour, which was 10 stone of flour. We got some tea and sugar. That's about the 3 things, and salt, of course. Salt was very important. That was about the only thing we bought. We never bought. I baked all the bread, and the fire was it was an open fire with 2 hobs, a crane. You want to see these things. A crane, and you hung your oven on the crook over the fire, big turf fire. Would make the scone of bread bake it on the table or on your basin or whatever. Put it in the oven, put the lid on it, then take your tongs and pick up the coals and put them on the lid, on the top of the lid, and your bread would be ready. If it was good and hot now, be ready in 20 minutes. And you'd lift the lid off with the coals on it, which was tricky enough because you could turn some of the coals into the oven, and take out the scone of bread and stand it up on the coal. And I done the soda bread, I done treacle bread, I done currant bread, the whole works. That was butter and bread, okay.
Just on that, when you took the butter out of the what was left
of milk,
of the milk, the whey or whatever.
Yeah, well then what was left in the churn was buttermilk, and that buttermilk was something else. That buttermilk would be fed to calves. I'd use that buttermilk to bake the bread, you know. We had the chickens outside, and of course we had the eggs, fresh eggs. We had all that. There'd be a pig reared, and that pig was killed. We had a big tea chest, maybe about 2 or 3 stone of salt, coarse salt, and the pig, that was all, the butcher, or whatever you call him, he come, I don't know what kind of he wasn't a butcher as such, but he was a man that killed the pig, and he'd sort out this. And I used to make black pudding out of the stomach of the, first of all, I'd have a little tin when they'd collect the blood of the pig. Then I'd make black pudding.
And how would you make it?
Well, it consisted of oatmeal. You mix the oatmeal into that, and I can't think of anything else now. You'd put pepper and salt in it, of course, to kind of flavour it, I suppose. And you put that all into the stomach of the pig and sew it with a big darning needle and a white thread. You'd pop that into a big pot and you'd boil it till it was properly well cooked. And then you take it out and you'd be able to slice it and cook it on the pan. So you see, we had the pig in the salt, or in a tea chest with the salt all around it. There was all kinds of bacon there. We'd hang a side of that bacon up and beside the fire or in the chimney kind of thing, and it was what you call smoked bacon. So you see what I mean? There wasn't need for money. There was no need for money when you had your own potatoes, your own vegetables, which we had, your own eggs, and you could kill a chicken on these roosters or whatever you call them, and we'd have that as well. And the bacon was great. So you see, you didn't really need anything from town apart from what I told you. And the donkey and the creels would go down there and somebody walked down behind it. The only time that I ever went to town was on a Sunday going to Mass. That was the only time I ever seen the town, you know.
But in terms of where would you get money for
well, you see, well, of course, you tell me he worked in the coal mines, okay? Oh, he did, and then he after that he worked on the as a council as well, that kind of thing. He was doing it. Then he'd have cattle, and he'd be selling some cattle in the fair. Fair days would be coming on, and he'd have money for that. But that was his. I didn't see any money. I had no pocket money. I had nothing. I was only a slave, I suppose you could call me. I don't know what you could call me, but that was the way it was. And
when you talked earlier about putting the coals on the oven,
mm-hmm.
Are you talking about the embers of turf or?
Oh, the embers, but those.
Not.
Oh, of course we could get coal because the coal mines were pretty near, you know. I mean, they weren't that far away. No, this is the coal of the turf, and they never got black. They kept red when they were together, you know. Right. That way, they were always red. You know, they were always keeping the lid hot, and that pot was that oven was tight-fitting lid. There's no way that there was any, you know. And when you get out the soda cake, it would be this high. It would be hitting the lid. You know,
yeah.
the buttermilk would raise it up. Yeah. You know, between the soda and the buttermilk would raise up the thing.
Would it be your husband yourself involved in cutting turf for a year? Or?
Oh, they'd go out and cut the turf. You know, but I used to have to go to the bog, and I'd bring Mary in one creel, and I'd bring Mary would be about 5 maybe. Packy would be about 3. You know, he's the eldest boy that's living on the farm up there. I'd have one in each creel to balance, and I'd walk behind the donkey, God knows I'd be walking maybe another 2 miles away into the bog, and well, I wouldn't fill the creels because they'd have to sit on the creels coming out again because I couldn't be dragging them along the road, you know. They'd sit on the thing coming back, and I'd still have to walk all the way. I'd done that myself because there was nobody else to do it. I mean, he was working in the coal mines or working in the forest, wherever he was working at the stage, you know. He wouldn't be coming home till evening anyway. Well, I didn't know how to make box tea, I never heard about it. But Philly's mother was an old lady, and she showed me how to make the box tea. She told me what to do, and I done it then. But I had to grate it with the ordinary grater. Did you ever see a grater? No?
No.
A grater. You rub you peel the spud, then you rubbed it on the grater, and all the pulp or whatever you call it came out, and you'd have it in a basin, you know. But your knuckles would get it and all the rest of it. But finally, I mean, since I came here, I bought myself a food mixer, and all I have to do is to drop in the spud and do the thing, and it comes up very quickly. When they'd be on the bog, they had, and even when they were out at hay or anything, this was the norm. A big feed of box tea was supposed to feed you for the day. It was like steak. It's so filling, you know. There's no way you'd be hungry after it, I'll tell you. And that's what I used to do. I used to make the box tea, and I'd have about 12 rounds of a frying pan, one after the other there, to feed the family. The men maybe coming to help with the hay, you know, and you'd have to have this, you know.
Can you tell me like talk me through how you make box tea?
No, you get about, let me think how many spuds now you'd want for, about 8 potatoes, normal size. You peel them and cut them in about 4. And you grate that. Well, of course, if you want to put them in a mixer, my food mixer is just on the back window there. It's more modern now. You'd be doing the food mixer. I'm sure you would do. Have you got one?
I have, I think.
Yeah, well, this is it. Well, all you have to do then is get your potato and drop them in, and you plug it in, of course, and press down this thing, and it'll swirl around, and it'll chop the spud into pulp. Complete pulp. I'd say about 8 potatoes, and then I put a spoon of salt, about this much baking soda into it. Usually I beat 2 eggs into it. A lot of people don't do that, but I do, to make it kind of light, you know. And I put about a 1/4 cup of buttermilk in as well. Then I get the plain flour, and I put it out of the mixture into a basin, and mix it then with the plain flour till it's kind of like porridge, you know. Then get your pan, the frying pan, put it in the cooker, heat it well, put a piece of butter, not any of those yolks of things that are in the boxes, you know, the
marges.
Not any of that, because all that is like, there's oil in those and it'll stick. I use a normal butter, always. And I put a piece of butter in the pan, make it good and hot, and then you would take maybe 2 big spoons or maybe 3 out and put it on the pan. And cook it that way and turn it over, and you know, it takes a while, but there's nothing to it. Yeah.
Sounds nice.
And let's have a think now, what else we've done.
Well, you say you'll be growing your own. How big was the farm, by the way? I mean, in land terms.
Oh, about 65 acres.
That's big.
But like, you see, it was more grazing than anything else. But there was some places that you could put potatoes in, and the cabbage and the turnips and all them things that you grow for the house. The cabbage, no, I never seen a cabbage like the cabbage we used to have. It would be about this, this big. And you could cut it down and maybe use a 1/4 of it. You wouldn't have to use a whole lot. But what we wouldn't use for the house, we'd give it to the cattle. They'd eat the turnip, and they'd eat everything, you know.
And would it be a case of just digging with a spade with the area?
No, there was no horses, no plough. It was by what they call a loy. Have you heard of a loy?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yes, you have. Yeah, it's a long wooden handle, and the loy itself is, or the blade is like sharp. And this is what you use. You dig. You see, I didn't know anything about this because when I left the north, I remember us, the farmers down there, they'd plough the land, they'd take a harrow and they'd break all the lumps, they'd cultivate it till it was like dust, you know, and then they'd make drills. The plough would come in and horse or whatever, and they'd plough drills, and then you dropped your potato in between the drill. First of all, you put some manure in there, and then you drop the spud in, and then you come along then with the horse and the plough again, and you go where the pile was on this side, and you'd close it in, and that was drills. That was the way they do it down there. But sure, I didn't know anything about this. And when the spuds was, when Tommy used to go out and plant the potatoes with the loy, he'd dig what you call a ridge. You just dig a line. First of all, there was what you call a scoring rope, and you had to make it straight, you see. What a scoring rope meant that you'd have to push a piece of rope down one end and a stick and bring it right down, and you had to have it straight.
Nice.
And you dug the ground and turned that, what you call the sod, you turned that over.
Okay.
And that was, and in the middle then you see there was a sod on either side, but where the potato was planted was under the sod. It wasn't in the groove or whatever, in the middle, you know. It was under the sod, that was the way it was, and then the potatoes would grow. But when you go out to dig, I was sent out with the bucket to bring in the bucket of spuds for the dinner. I pulled a stalk, and I might get about 2 potatoes there, and I couldn't see no more. But where was the spuds, do you think? Were under the sod. They were under the sod, you see. And I was digging from the top right way down, out nearly halfway down the drill before I had a bucket, before I had enough spuds. And sure, I wasn't digging, or I should have been digging at all. Or I wasn't lifting the sod to get the spud out from under it. See, the spuds were in there, on either side. And here was I got an awful telling off for that. What are you doing, or what? Do you know anything? That's what I'd be told. Anyway, we'll get over that hurdle.
So there wouldn't be any. You needed a horse for if you wanted to use a plough. Would that be the?
You would. But you see, there wasn't really. This was the way the potato was put in. You know, most of them, people would put them in the garden, in a small garden. They wouldn't put much in. I used to say it's like the postage stamp on the side of a letter. That's about a square of potatoes, and the rest was all field. You know. They only put in small, just for your own use, you know, that way. You wouldn't be selling them anyway, you know. But,
would you grow potatoes maybe for the pigs?
Oh yeah, they got everything. They'd eat anything anyway, you know. They would. And we used to have the potatoes. You'd chop them up for the cows as well, and throw some meal on them, some kind of Indian meal, I think you called it. And they used to have that.
What you said you probably could just go down to the village maybe for Sunday mass would be probably.
Oh, mass, that was it.
Yeah.
And mind you, walk. There was no way of getting anywhere, only walking. I walked from the house down into town to mass and walked back home again.
And would you go to town on fair day, or would that be more of a?
Well, I'll tell you what I done on the fair day, and this really you'll wonder at this. Tommy used to go off with these cattle down to the fair. And he loved a drink very much. And sooner than have him, when he'd sell his cattle, going into the pub and spending the night there without food. You see, you couldn't leave the cattle and nowhere to eat. I walked from the house to town with a pile of sandwiches and tea for him. Nobody else ever done that, only me. That was the way I was. To make sure that he'd be fed, and then there'd be no trouble. And he'd be going in, and if you know, when a man has a lot of drink, maybe, and no food, he doesn't be well.
So, see, how just about it was a fair day itself. What would the normal? Would your husband bring a couple of cows to sell? Would you buy calves?
Well, it wasn't really cows you'd be selling. It would be bullocks.
Bullocks, yeah.
Yeah, bullocks. And when the boys were coming on in the years, like Packy and Seamus were the two lads then, they'd go to fair with him as well to herd the cattle, stand and keep cattle separated. There'd be some other farmers would have their cattle and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Everybody was standing in different places, with their cattle.
Yeah, I believe that the village was very different. I'm sure then there's a lot more pubs, a lot more
pubs,
restaurants.
There's no restaurant. No.
Dinner houses.
Well,
I don't know what you call them.
Well, there'd be people would maybe bring them in for tea or something in there. There would be the odd tea room. They wouldn't call them restaurant as such because there wouldn't be that many people to be going in there anyway. I think it was more drinking than anything else. But the fair would last all day on to the wee hours of the morning. That way. But I'd be home. I'd be milking cows. And it was a heifer now. It wasn't a cow. This was our first calf, and she was in the field away from the house. But I knew that she was going to calve soon. But I didn't expect her she was going to calve that quick, But he had gone. There was nobody there but herself and the children, And then I see this. She was in the field and she was lamenting and roaring. I said, there must be something wrong. I said, better get down there. I went down and I jumped across a ditch into the field, and she was just having the calf, and I took the 2 feet of the calf and I pulled the calf from the cow. Okay. Well, what did she do? She jumped up and she made for me. She was going to kill me because I went near her. See. Yeah. And I got across the ditch as quick as I could. I'll never forget it. I had to deliver quite a few calves. I would do anything, I didn't, and nothing was too much for me that way. Oh God.
But just going back to the village of Drumkieran, there was hotels then and pubs and stuff. What would be the big difference compared to today? Would it be a lot more?
Not a lot, really. There wouldn't be. Drumkieran hasn't progressed that much. No, it hasn't. Apart from the few new buildings going up now. I mean, there's still only one little small, what do you call it? You wouldn't even call it supermarket. Pat Deggins over there, and then that little shop that ye were in. That's it. And there's a wee shop below at the bottom of the town, a paper shop or whatever. There's nothing. You see, we do need a lot of things here. We need a chemist, we need a bank, which we haven't got, and we need a proper supermarket where we have to go to Sligo to do proper shopping. And on the Friday, which I go, there's a rural bus lift, and we go there to Tesco and do our shopping. Tuesday I go to Carrick-on-Shannon or maybe to Drumshambo. That's the 2 days the buses go, and that's the only time that I go out to shop. I don't buy anything much in the town anyway. Cause you're living alone, you don't need much, I buy enough milk in Tesco to keep me going for the week, and have a fridge you can do. Yeah.
Would your farm have been big enough where you would have it for a harvest, say a hay harvest or whatever, where you'd have a mehel or people over to help out?
Oh yeah. We had of course.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what they did do there. They were quite good about that. One farmer would help the other. You see, when the weather would be right for that purpose anyway, and they'd come in when they'd be gathering the hay. They'd be building a rick, what they call a rick of hay. I mean, there's bales and there's all sorts of things now, but them days it was all, there'd be a load of people coming in with the pitchforks and throwing up the hay, and I was the one that was feeding them. I'd have to, all the hay was nearly on ground level, but I had to climb up to the house to bring the dishes home and bring the food out, and they ate everything out. That was the one thing that I had to do. And sometimes I need to carry the breakfast down to the field. They didn't want to come up. They didn't want to be climbing, but it didn't matter. I had to climb. I had to go up and down. I need a helicopter to get up.
Sounds like your job was the hardest. Is your job the hardest?
Oh, my job. Of course, my job was the hardest. Why wouldn't it be? But I was willing and able. See.
You wouldn't. There'd be no mains water out of a tap at that time. So how would you?
No, we had. Oh God! Don't talk to me about that. That was bad. We had what do you call a spout, water coming, a spring more or less, and that's where you got the water for your tea. And we'd have to go to the river The river was down on the level of the, and you had to go down there, bring buckets of water.
And so far, was it?
It was quite a bit, you know, and that way, that's the way you run it. And as well as that, what I had in this house was, well, of course, I was telling you about the open. First of all, you see, that house, we had to leave that house. We'll just see how many children were there when I left. 5. There was only one child born in the next house that we went to, which is up this road up here, about 2 miles. That house had a range in it. It was still thatched, but what we done was there was a big barn, and the thatch was taken off the roof. The roof was raised up a half story, and it was slated. Then we renovated that house, and we lived in the barn while the house was being renovated. The big barn was there. The beds were in there. We done everything. It was a big loft over the cow byre. You know,
Right.
That's where we had to live till this house was done.
So the original home,
it fell down. Oh God, no, it's gone. In fact, Mary, let's see, have I got? No, I won't. I won't get up because I'd have to be pulling these things out. I'll get the CD afterwards, and you'll see where Mary took a photographer over from Galway, and they climbed up that hill, and Mary stood in the walls of the old house where she was born. That's where in the cover of her CD, she's standing in the walls. Mary, I don't know how she's done, but this photograph, you can imagine a man with the yokes on his back climbing up into this wilderness. That's all you could call it.
Was Mary actually born in were all your children?
Well, no. The only child was born at home was the boy, the next to Mary. Mary was born in Manhattan Hospital, okay? And the next, I had a sister came down from home, down from the north to me, and she said, she hadn't a clue. She said, don't be going to the hospital talk. She said, stay at home. I think she must have been. And of course, me stayed put. I didn't go, and really, the midwife came about, I think she stayed all night. But I was passing out all the time, and I remember, there was always whiskey in our house. It was nearly like the milk. I was getting hot toddies to revive me. And that was it. Finally, Packy arrived and we got on with it.
How many children did you have all?
6, 3 boys and 3 girls. So the last child, Martin, was born in the next house that we went to after we'd been in Commonwealth, because the house, like, it wasn't big enough for 6 children, or because it wasn't big enough for us, especially with so little space.
Yeah, it was still only 1 bedroom. Was it?
There was only 1 bedroom, but then there was a few beds in. There was a cot in it,
Yeah.
and then another bed in the kitchen, which would hold maybe 3 children. You know the way children used to sleep, what you used to call heads and troughs.
Oh,
Yeah, your head had to be up there, and your big toe might be stuck in somebody's mouth or something.
And then there was a settle bed.
Oh yes, the settle bed was there in the kitchen as well.
Can you describe what a settle bed?
Well, a settle bed is like a big wooden. That's all. It's made of wood, and you fold it up during the day, and you have it as a couch. Well, not a comfortable one anyway. You can imagine a wooden thing. Like there used to be a lot of farms. The farms, wooden. Did you ever see a farm in a church?
I think I know. I think they have today a storage. You could open it up. Is it?
You open it up anyway, and you it had a mattress inside it, and you could fold it up and put with the mattress and the pillows and all inside, and then you opened it out at night, and that was your bed.
Would the main harvest be for hay, or would it be for
we had corn. We had the corn as well, and I used to love going out into the cornfield because I loved to be gathering the sheaves of corn and tying it in. You'd make a little, sheaf or whatever you call it, and then you'd tie it, and then you'd stuck it. You'd put one on either side, and you'd keep going round till you made a big, and then you'd tie the top of it, and that was, the air was going up through it to dry it out,
Yeah.
And Tommy used to make mats for the donkey, You made that with the straw. You beat the corn off the straw, and that would be for the. What way would we do that? You flailed it anyway with two sticks, one a short stick and a long one, tied together with a piece of leather or something, and you'd whale the corn, and what would come from that would be oatmeal kind of thing, and then you'd have chaff, and you'd have the
Actual straw.
Straw, exactly, straw. That was it, and that's what we made the mats out of. He used to make mats. He used to thatch the house. He was a thatcher as well. He thatched the house, okay, with rushes. The rushes were cut in the field with a scythe, and you thatched them, and that was that done.
And would it be you and your husband who would flail this corn?
Yeah, yeah.
Or would you get people
yeah.
in?
No. Oh no, you do it yourself. Oh God, you just have to do all these things. You wouldn't really get anybody in,
But you would get people in for the hay.
Oh yes, the hay was something else. Because you see, you'd have to really do it when you'd get the weather. Sometimes you see the weather would let you down, and you get into the middle of a shower or something, and you couldn't really work at it while they get wet.
So yeah, you would have corn or oats, and how would you get rid of the chaff out of the oats?
Oh well, you'd shake a chaff maybe in the byre to soak up some of the, if you're cleaning out a byre where there's cows doing their whatever, you'd have to put that in there and soak up all that and clean it out, and then that would be what you call manure. Then you'd make the.
And with the corn itself or the oats, what would you do with that?
Well, all that would be given to the cattle to feed them. You wouldn't. It wouldn't be really good enough for, say, oatmeal for using, like oatmeal porridge. Now, we used to make the porridge. Porridge was great. I used to make pots of rice for them as well when they come home from the bog, instead of
from your own oats, is it?
No. This would be meal, porridge meal.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be using,
So I don't know. So I don't know if with oats, do you need to grind it or anything? Or
no, it's almost it's ground. When you flail it, it's ground.
Okay.
It is.
Okay.
It is. It's ready for more or less use. But you'd have to kind of clean it. You know what I mean? It's still not. There's chaff there. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Shells,
a husk or something.
Or something like that. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So yourself and your husband will be outside, and would you have a cover on the ground to save the oats from the chaff?
Oh yeah, of course you had. You had to have a
Tarpaulin.
it's something like that. You'd have to have that to keep it from. Oh, you couldn't leave it on the ordinary street where there'd be stones and bits and pieces of gravel or anything like that. You couldn't do that. No, you'd have to bring it where it would be clean.
Right. The thing one of the things that you mentioned that you kind of glossed over is I'm curious about your husband or your husband to be went to your father and had a.
Yes, I had a drink to seal the bargain.
What was the bargain? Was there money involved or land?
Oh no, well no. Listen, this was the one thing, you see, and I didn't realise it at the time. That's a good question now that you mentioned. I got that quite often. This man wanted a wife, okay, somebody housekeep or whatever you could call it, but I didn't have a dowry to give him. I didn't possess. I worked all right, but there was 12 of us, and we were all out working to keep the wolf from the door, kind of thing, So I mean, other people that. If we had land, which we didn't have, my father was what you call a stone mason. He went off building churches, cut stone. You know that cut stone that they're using now? He built schools, police barracks, stone walls. It was all over the place. That was his job. So he just bring in the money,
Yeah.
And then the family went out. But we didn't have any. We weren't farmers. We weren't farmers in the north, No, we weren't.
Okay.
So you see, there wasn't any land or anything, and there was such a crowd of us. There's no way that I could have a dowry to give him. But that was the way if it went. That's what I should have had for him, but I didn't. So you see, I didn't own anything. Just had to work and work and work.
So it was simply your husband just asked your father for permission.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. I'm just curious, did you have a choice? Do you think? You had a choice. You could have said no, or I don't know this man, or.
Funny thing about it, when we did go to the priest that was going to marry us anyway, he said to me, he said, "How well do you know this man?" Well, I said, "My sister is married to his brother," and that seemed to clinch the. that was enough, seemingly. It was a big gamble now, wasn't it? But it lasted. We got married in 53. Mary was born in 55. And Martin was born he was the youngest, he was born in 66. But Martin was, what do we see what Martin was? Martin was about 23 when his father died. He had a big accident, Martin, when he was 17. He was like that young man. He finished the technical school down here, and he was on. He had got his first job in Sligo, and he was taken off from home or up the road here where we lived last, and he was on his bike, and in fact it was my bicycle he was on, and he cycled down the road. You know what a young fellow will do, and he ran into the night before. It was a heavy wind, and this tree was laying across a big trunk of a tree. The whole road was just covered with the tree. He ran into the tree and he fractured his skull. He was on life support machine up in Dublin. It was about 200 yards from the house. The bicycle was laying up against the tree, but Martin was able to walk from where he hit the tree back home and come back into the house he left the house around 7 o'clock in the morning, and he was back about 20 past 7, and he just opened the door and he came in, and I said, "Martin," well, I heard him coming, and I got out of bed again and came in the kitchen. I said, "Martin, what's wrong?" I fell off the bike, and I can remember him well. He had a pair of Wellingtons on him, and I brought him over and left him sitting on the couch, and he had a big, his head was swelling out, a big black over one eye, and the next thing he collapsed on the floor. He just rolled off the couch and collapsed on the floor, and he was starting to get sick. And I rolled him over. Tommy, he got out of bed and he said, "What happened to you, Martin?" And Martin had never spoke, of course, and he was getting sick. And I put some cushions under his head, and he stood looking down at him, and he went completely paralysed. And we got a neighbour to get the car up. We didn't have a car of our own, but we got this neighbour to come and bring the car. We had a laneway to go down to the house, from the road, the main road. We got him to bring the car down as far as possible, and we carried him out and left him. We had to take the front seat out of the car, because he was like a stiff board. And I sat in the back, and he had his head on my knee and legs were to the front. And we brought him down the road. We didn't know about the tree, you see. But when we came as far as where he had run into the tree, his bicycle was buckled. And what did we do? We had to turn around and come back up again and take another route into Sligo. But we rang an ambulance on the way, and the ambulance didn't meet us, about maybe 4 miles from Sligo. And they got out the stretcher and put him out onto it. and they kept slapping him on the face. And I said, there's no, he's not, he's, you know, unconscious or whatever. But they brought him in and put him in the life support machine immediately. And the next thing, they got a helicopter, and they got him into that, and he wasn't even, Martin is big, he's over 6 foot tall, you know, and they put him into the helicopter, kind of sideways, and his feet were, they could hardly get the thing closed, you know. But they flew him to the Richmond Hospital in Dublin, it's closed since then, since the Beaumont Hospital now, you know. And it was the Richmond that time. That was the head injury where I can't remember the doctor, what was it, Phillips or something. That was in 83 anyway. But he was there in the intensive care and on the life support machine for I don't know how long. But finally Mary went to Dublin. We were up there all the time, in fact. And she bought a CD or a radio with the earphones or whatever. And Martin was very fond of pop music and the whole works, and she got these things into his ears, and it brought him around. He began to come to. The doctor told me, he said he will have a little injury. Some of the cells in the brain have died since, you know, he wasn't completely, but he was 99% anyway. And he come to, of course, he had to start to learn to speak. His jaws were stiff. His eyes, he wasn't moving an eyelid or nothing. He couldn't do nothing. And they had to put him into this pool. And this one was making him swim, and he was, God, when I think of it, he was flailing his arm trying to hitting her because she was ducking him down and pulling him up, and he thought he was going to drown. And he had to learn to walk, and he'd learn to do everything all over again. It took him a long, long time before and now he's married, and he's driving a what do you call the Simon community? And you know, it's up in Dublin. Well, they have a big van, and Martin goes around collecting all the furniture and bringing it to the shop in Galway, and that's his job. So now
he's back on his feet, as it were.
He's back on his feet.
That's
Yeah,
great.
he is. Yeah, he is.
Just about that, I mean, I suppose in earlier days there wasn't much money if people were sick for the doctor or anything.
Oh no, not at all.
What kind of cures would there be, or would there be people who had the cure for?
Oh yeah, there's lots of them.
Yeah.
Oh, there was indeed.
Right, what sort of?
Cures. Let me think now. What would be? There was a cure for ringworm, and I think that the people that had had that cure was a father and mother were of the same name. You see, my granddaughter there now. My daughter Gertie is married in England. She married a McPartlan. She was McPartlan, and she married a McPartlan. Packy that's up the road. He's McPartlan, and he married a girl the name of McPartlan, which was odd. And those children have cures of maybe is it the whooping cough or something? It's something like that, you know. But you see, I'm not too sure what. I know there's one of them anyway, and you put a donkey's bridle over their head or something and walk them across a stream. This is supposed to be. And people used to laugh at that, but that was the cure, that they got rid of what they had.
What would be the biggest kind of illnesses at the time?
Oh well, those times there was wait a minute now, let me think. When we were growing up, of course, we had diphtheria and we had scarlet fever, and we had mumps, and we had you know the mumps, the thing that used to swell your glands would swell up, and the bacteria and all that. But the diphtheria, of course, it was deadly. It was, you die from that, The scarlet fever was all all little red spots, and then there was, of course, the measles. That wasn't. All these things are. You get injected against them now,
So would there be people, say, in the community who would be well known for being able to have the cure, maybe say a prayer or something, or you try? Would it? Oh
yeah, of course. There was a woman, but she died since, and she used to have the cure, what they call the head fever. You'd have a terrible headache, and it seems that in the middle of your head would be open, you know. And she put her hands on your head, and she'd say some prayers, whatever she'd done, and you'd get the cure of the head fever. Whether she passed it on, you see, when you know you're supposed to pass on a cure to somebody else, some of your own people, you know. Then there's a cure of what else? Oh, sprain. I remember spraining my ankle, and I was brought to this man, and he tied, I don't know what he'd done, but he tied a woolen thread round my ankle and said some prayers or something, and that was the cure.
Yes.
So now, oh, there's loads of them, but I mean, just at the minute I wouldn't remember them, you know.
Would there always be a kind of a prayer attached, like a religious?
Yeah, there would be, I suppose, you know. There would be, that kind of thing, yeah.
Another area, I suppose, that's changed would be funerals and deaths and wakes and
Oh, there was always a wake.
the washing of bodies, I suppose.
Well, I remember now, and this was odd, and I was only young, and I was asked to what they call laying out the body. Faylie Gallagher, which was Tommy's cousin that lived in the house. Remember I was telling you about my sister Eileen marrying this cousin of Tommy's, you know. She died. She was very old. She was well over 80 years. I mean, 80 then was pretty old, not now, because people are living that much longer. I was asked, I mean, I'd never done it in my life before, and I was asked to help this woman to lay this person out. You wash them and put on their habit or whatever it was, you know, and lay them out in the bed. First of all, you said, they always have these white sheets, you know. You'd put a sheet, maybe the bed would be in the room. You put a sheet over the body. You'd put another sheet round the walls, like, you know, it was all white, you know. Although, mind you, the walls themselves, that I didn't get to that one about the walls. I must tell you that one later. That was what I had to do. And then you were supposed to take a drink of spirits and to give you a bit of. I never drank whiskey or anything like that. But this is what you were supposed to do. Take that to give a bit of courage, I suppose.
And what would you be washing the body with corpses?
Well, you've heard of a bed bath, if you know what I'm talking about. You wouldn't put them into a bath. You wouldn't do a wash bath or anything. A bed bath, meaning you'd get towels or cloths and wash the whole body. And I mean, I suppose if it was a man, you'd shave them and you'd fix their hair, and you know, that way. Although, mind you, I think a lot of people paint their faces and say that they had no teeth or something, that get cotton wool and push it into to make them like what they used to be. You know what I'm saying, the faces get thin and all that, but they push cotton wool into inside their cheek to fill them up that way.
People, somebody died and they'd be washed and laid out on the bed.
On the bed, but the sheet would be coming up to about here, and then you see they would have a habit, you know, whatever it would be, a brown. I think it's a brown when the men wear, the blue one maybe for the women. You know, that's before they're put in the coffin. They're in the bed at this stage, and then you see they're there till the wake is over, and then the undertaker, whatever, brings the coffin, and they pick up the remains and put it into the coffin, you know, and leave the lid off till the family see the remains for the last time, I suppose. And that's it. But I think there was, I don't know who died, but I remember there was a lot of snow on the ground at this stage. There was no road into this house that we were in Comalt, you see. And this it wasn't Tommy's father now, because he died in June, but it was in the winter time. And what they had to do, they couldn't carry the coffin on the shoulders down to the road because they'd lose their feet with the snow, you know. It was all down a big field, you know, down to the road. And they got a sheet of zinc. They put the coffin on that, and the sleigh, you know the way you do a sleigh, you've seen sleighs, you know, sitting on a sleigh going in the snow.
Did it look bizarre?
I'm telling you.
And when you say,
But it was, there's a brainwave, I suppose, when you think about it.
the person be laid out, so the wake would consist of.
Oh yes, the wake was something else. It was terrific. It was. Well, they wouldn't sing or anything, you know what I mean. But they'd be telling yarns and they'd be smoking their heads off. Clay pipes. I remember telling my father having a clay pipe, a little white yoke. You've seen a clay pipe, have you?
Yeah.
I'm sure you have. Well, that's what they had. Clay pipes. And there were loads of cigs maybe as well, but the clay pipe was the old-fashioned way. And a barrel of Guinness. It was barrels, not bottles. And everybody was getting they'd be half tight, I suppose, before the morning,
Would it be a case of it would sort of start in the afternoon and go on?
The wake would be, most of the wake would be going on during the night, that way. It would go on all night to the next day, It'd be mostly men, but there might be a few women up to make the tea and the sandwiches and that way,
Another thing is rural electrification, when people got the electricity in. Well, first when you were in your house, when you got married, what?
All I had was an oil lamp hung on the wall with paraffin oil and a wick and a globe, that was it. Then when it got more modernised, we got a what do you call a hurricane lamp. It was one that you carried outside when it would be winter time, and when you'd be going to the byre to milk a cow or something, you'd have to bring that with you for the light, And that's what we had.
Be a little wick in it.
Oh yeah, there'd be a wick in it, and the oil would be in the bottom, and there'd be a big globe on it, and that carrying it with the handle, And then we got to what they call a tilly lamp. There was a mantle on it, and you put a little drop of methylated, I think, into there's a little thing here under the mantle, and you lit that, and then the mantle went red, and it was covered with a globe. No way that any air could get at it or anything. Because if it did, it would go out.
Was that the thing you had to sort of pump?
And yes, I think as you say, you did have to pump to bring it full into the. Oh, I'm sure you've seen some of those things.
No,
I know.
Primus
stove is right.
Same principle.
You're right. Yeah, exactly. That's it. But we had candles, of course, lots of them. But a candle was a bit dangerous, where there were children around. A bit.
And what about when the electricity came?
Gertie, now she was next. First of all, there was Mary, then there was Packy, there was Gertrude, she would be. I remember electricity came when she was born. That was really something, to get the electricity into that house, that old house up on the hill, which we did. And I remember buying the first electric kettle, and it was, I think it was chrome. It was a 6-pint one anyway. I know that. I'll always remember that one. And that was terrific. That was really good.
Because all you had was.
I had nothing before that. Only the pot. The kettle hung over the fire, I had nothing else.
Well, what year was it, roughly, did the electricity come?
The electricity, well, Gary was born, Mary was born 55, 56, 57. She was born about 58, so it came then. It was there that meant 58 years, 1958 she was born, yeah.
So what difference did the electricity make? You had light. You had your electric kettle, which was
that was good, yeah. Not a lot, to tell the truth. Not a lot, because we still had the fire. The heat had to come from the fire, There's no such thing as getting any electric fire. We didn't bother, really, That was about the only thing that was good, to get the light in and get an electric kettle and a plug in the wall and that. You could boil a kettle if you were in a hurry.
I mean,
especially when there's a baby, you see, this is the big thing. You see, when the other ones are there, I mean, you had to have boiling water, you had so many things, to have everything clean and, and you'd have to have a boiling kettle all the time to scald bottles and heat things, you know.
It must be difficult for someone getting up early in the morning
Oh,
to
don't
go
I
out.
know?
How would they have
6
a cup of tea?
o'clock, yeah.
They have to. They couldn't have anything, tea or anything, could they? It would take a long time to.
Well, you just had to be up in time to cook the breakfast. Oh yeah, you'd have to be up at 6 o'clock to get all ready. If a man was going to work, he'd have to be work at 8 o'clock. And they walked all the way to the pits, which was maybe 4 miles walk, you know. That was the way they done it.
Would how would you do that? Would the fire have been banked up the night before?
Oh yes, yes.
So
There's such a thing as the ashes was underneath the grate. You see, there was a hob here, what they call it, 2 hobs, and the grate was there, and then the fire in the grate, and then underneath them was the ashes. And you took a shovel and you'd lift the ashes, and you'd when the fire would be, you know, and you'd cover all that. And in the morning, all you had to do is to rake that down, and you'd have a nice glow, and then you put some more turf on, and that was that. You know.
You need a lot of planning to make a cup of tea.
What's this? Why, it was so funny. One day I had she would be my niece-in-law now. She wasn't my niece as such, but Tommy's sister was this girl's mother. She came to visit me, and I always prided myself on my cooking. Was mad about cooking, and I had a pot of broth, or what you call soup, on the fire, and I took the lid off it. It was ready to serve anyway. I took the lid off the pot to show her the soup that was in the thing, and what came down the chimney on a big lump of soup into the pot soup. So the soup was no flavour. I had to dump that.
Did not give it a black soup.
Well, that happened to me. You know, it's so funny the things that did happen. But you see, it's, the chimney, or the what do you call it? The chimney goes up, and all that soot was there. But how well this lump of soot had to come down and get in there. I don't know what you couldn't touch it. She didn't get a drop of it.
Well, soot is carbon. That's very good.
And then we were on our own one. This old neighbour came in, called him Pat McGowan, and he came in what they call Kalian. This was one thing they used to do. These old fellows would come in, sit and have a chat, and they'd be smoking pipes, and they'd have a big spit into the fire. Well, they never, you know, that was the way they were. You know, you just had to put up with that. But there was a fire up in the bedroom, and the Packy, he was the one that was up there. Maybe there was some more of them up there as well, but Packy decided he'd put some paper into the fire, and it was a windy night, very windy, and the paper went up the chimney, caught the chimney, and the chimney went on fire. And it was a thatched roof. And think about that, you can imagine. And of course, Tommy, he had gone to town. He come into Drumcairn, and this old fella, he was very old, Benji. I went outside, and the sparks was flying out the chimney, and I thought, oh my God, I said, the roof is going to go on fire. You see, with red sparks coming out of the chimney would be onto the thatch, and would burn it, you know. But he went out, and he found a ladder in the shed, or the barn, I think it was, and I started carrying buckets of water to him. He went up the ladder, and he'd be about halfway up, and I'd give him a bucket of water. But he wasn't throwing it where he should have thrown it, down the sides of the thing to get out, put the fire out, or the chimney fire out. He was just throwing it straight down, and where was it landing? On the floor, in the bedroom, coming down through the bedroom into the kitchen, all right? A suit rain, a suit, whatever. But I remember putting my hand on the rung of the ladder, and he'd be coming back down, and he put his big foot right on my hand, and the wind was howling like mad, and he couldn't hear me, and I was shouting at him to take his foot on me. I was suffering.
I hope you had a whiskey.
A bucket in one hand, and my hand on the rung, and him with his foot. And he used to be praising this woman when Tommy came back. He'd say, "Well, that's the greatest woman." All the things that I used to do when he was away, that he should have been around to sort that out, and then it was me going out there. But anyway, you think back on these things, you just have to laugh, you know.
Would your own generation, and then of course you were married then, but would would you be aware of emigration around the area?
Well, the only one that I can remember emigrating was my son Seamus, and he wasn't very old at all. He may be about 18. And I can always remember the morning that he walked up the lane with his suitcase. No, first of all, his father didn't even know he was going. He just decided. There was a young friend that came from England, and of course, you know when lads come from England, they're always telling about the great times, and all they want is to come back with them for company. It's nothing else, you know. The great life they had. And Seamus decided all of a sudden that he was going. And I knew he was going, but I didn't want him to go at all. I didn't want him to leave. But his father didn't even know he was going. But he came down. This was the house that we had renovated, and that there was this upstairs and all that. The last house before we came to town. And he came down the stairs with his suitcase. And father said, "And where do you think you're going?" I'm going thinking, well, you're not. But he kept going. He walked up the lane along with this fella, and there was a car above the road, and they got in the car, and that was at last. Seamus. And
what year would this have been?
Well, he was about 18, and he's about let me see now. He'll be about 44, or is it? No, he's 46 now. So think about whatever.
Early 70s.
Yeah, could be. He went to England. Oh, there were lots of young men going off to England for work, because there was no work here, you know. But I mean, the farm was all right, surely, but a lot of them didn't want to work on the farm because there was no money on it anyway, you know. All they wanted was money in their pocket, you know.
One thing you said to remind you about the walls.
Yes, I whitewashed the walls. In the kitchen, that was the only, there was no such thing as painting or doing anything like that. And I didn't have any curtains for the windows. What I'd done was I got my big 10-stone flour bag. I used to make the sheets out of that. 4 of those 10-stone flour bags. First of all, there's a brand on those bags, you know. You know what a brand is? The name of the thing and where it was made and everything. And that was, you had to get rid of that, steeping those bags in washing soda. You got rid of that brand that way. And you whitened them, and then made your sheet. And I threw it all by hand, of course. There's no sewing machine or anything. So they made a big sheet out of that. I made the pillowcases out of the smaller ones, pillowcases out of my bags as well. But I didn't have any curtains on the window, so when I had the whitewashing done, thought it was great and everything. I got 2 flour bags. I dipped them in, what would you call it, daffodil dye. And I made 2 beautiful curtains for the windows. Everybody's admiring these curtains. Where did you buy them? I didn't buy them at all. I said I made them. And they were lovely. And it really looked fresh and clean. And, you know, lime, you know, the whitewash, it was the healthiest thing you could have, you know. There's no such thing as a smelly paint or anything like that, you know.
What was it? Would you make up your own whitewash or?
Oh yeah, you'd get a bag of lime, and you'd put some in a bucket, and you put some water in it, and you'd stir it up till it would come kind of like a paste, you know. Yeah. Then you'd have a whitewash brush, and you'd dip it in there and keep whitewashing your walls till they're done. Inside and out. Inside and out. Oh yeah, everywhere. Yeah, and there was a half door. There was a red. Well, the door was kind of red paint, and I don't know where that came from, but there was a half door, and then there was a top door. You know, as well. You just left the top door open, half open, and the half door closed. So the chickens wouldn't be coming in the kitchen, you know. Why, I was making these scones one morning, the little currant buns, you know, and I had taken the oven off the fire, and I had left it on the ground. And who came to the door? Only a tinker woman. and a few children with her. And I think she must have nearly fainted when she smelt the bread, the buns, the smell of the buns. And she asked me, would I tell me he was there? He said, "Will you get out?" He said, you're getting no buns in here. You know, you're not getting anything in here." And I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "Don't be saying that to the poor woman." I said, "Why wouldn't we give her something?" Well, she blessed me from heaven, and she said to him, you know what she said to him? I shouldn't say this in front of him. She said that you may die of cancer. She put a curse on him, and he did.
Oh God.
He did. That's odd.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
you know, it was sad, very sad. But that, I mean, they always said that I think his curse was very
That's
bad.
right. That's right.
Isn't that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those days people would say that anyway, you know, that was true, and I don't know.
Well, that's what's a superstition, of course. You know.
Well, that was it as well. That was it
Yeah.
too. That was it, yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
Was your age an average age, older, younger, or how were people? What age were people getting married? Women getting married at that time?
Well, some of them get married at 21.
Yeah.
In fact, my older sister got married at 21. But that would be about it, you know. And a fella could be 30.
Was that something you were conscious of?
Oh, yeah, it's
the
true.
bachelor
It's
fan
the
around.
bachelor, exactly. And mind you, that's one thing, that there was more bachelors in Leitrim than there was married people. You know what I mean? More men bachelors, you know. Oh, yeah.